Alexander Isak in action. We'll hear from Eddie Howe on the Swedish strike and whether they'll do any further business. Tell you who are doing further business though, and that is Wolves, because we've got some breaking news for you. You might have just heard at the end of the last hour, but Stuttgart striker Sasa Kalajdzic is having a medical at Wolves. Personal terms agreed, all being well. A formal announcement of this move could be done as soon as tonight. The deal is worth around £15 million plus add-ons. Remember, he was heavily linked with Manchester United, but it looks like Sasa Kalajdzic is moving to Wolves. They've been after a striker. They are very close to getting one. Right, we are streaming live on YouTube, so get your questions and comments in, and if you're watching at home, hashtag transfer talk. We start with that news that Bournemouth have sacked Scott Parker. It comes after 1 win and 3 defeats in the Premier League. The earliest Premier League sacking since Paul Sturrock was dismissed by Southampton in 2004. And Michael, we've got Michael, Emma and Kyle still with us this lunchtime. Michael, this morning when the statement came in, it was quite telling and quite strong.
Yeah, it's a strong statement from the owner, Maxim Demin. I won't start with the opening one where it's the usual gratitude, thank you to Scott for what he's done, and that what he done was getting them promoted back to the Premier League. But it's the second paragraph, Tom, the meat, where we nearly have to read and see what he has said. In order for us to keep progressing as a team and a club as a whole, it is unconditional that we are aligned in our strategy to run the club sustainably. We must also show belief in and respect for one another. That is the approach that has brought this club so much success in recent history, and one that we will not veer from now. Our search for a new head coach will begin immediately.
Yes, yeah, that certainly was. The meat on the bones, I think you missed a few key words. You missed a few key words of that analogy there. So Emma there, the statement was there, but the business done so far this window, we don't know if that's been a factor in this decision, but what have you made of it? What have Bournemouth done this summer?
I think there are implications, certainly from Scott Parker's side, that this maybe is a factor, because he admitted early on in the window, when he was speaking to the media, he said that the squad he had now was weaker than the one that he had when they got promoted from the Championship, and he's made various comments in the media. You look at his interview post the Liverpool game as well, saying that they are under-equipped at this level. So it's quite clear, I think, really, Tom, that he thought, look, they needed strengthening, and strengthening properly as well. If you look at the players that they've brought in this summer transfer window, you've got the final centre-back, Marcus Senesi, Marcus Tavernier from Borough, Joe Rothwell, Neto, 33-year-old goalkeeper from Barcelona, and Ryan Fredericks. Those last three all brought in on free transfers. Around £24 million they've spent, and I know Maxim Devin said he wants sustainability. Of course, he wants them to stay in the Premier League this time around, but you look at what Scott Parker's done. He's got them up to the Premier League, guaranteed them, about £150 million plus in the process of doing so, and this is what they've spent. And you've got to be looking around at the likes of Nottingham Forest, at the likes of Fulham as well, who've both come up as well, and maybe you think Scott Parker's point of view, he wanted more players in, and ultimately wanted a little bit more time at the football club as well.
And if Bournemouth do want more players in between now and the deadline, Kyle, they haven't got long, and surely this has to affect any transfer business.
Oh, definitely, you'd think. 2 days left in the transfer window, but then also they've got Wolves at home tomorrow night as well. So all attention surely will be turning to that and focusing on that match. They need to get some points or some more points on the board. Haven't won since that first game and their opening game against Aston Villa. They play Wolves at 7:30 tomorrow night. Then the attention will turn to the window closing on Thursday at 11 p.m. And I guess the question that they'll be asking will be, well, do we bring players in that we need to look at to strengthen different areas, especially after that 9-0 defeat to Liverpool, or do we look at players for the future and for the next manager? That might be quite hard if they don't know who that next manager might be. We know that Gary O'Neill will be taking interim charge, and he'll know that squad, he'll know where they'll need to strengthen for that. But just picking out one thing that Emma said was, a key line from that statement was our strategy to run the club sustainably. That suggests that even within the next 2 days, they're not going to go out and spend lots of money. They might need to strengthen key areas, but they aren't going to make any signings that don't fit that word sustainability, because that's what we've seen throughout the entire window. That might be one of the reasons why Scott Parker and the club aren't aligned in their future and how they see the club being run. So for now, for the next 2 days, I can't imagine lots of money being spent, but surely they'll be looking to the future, and if they want to be sustainable going forward, remaining a Premier League club. They can't continue with this squad that Scott Parker has said is ill-equipped for essentially the Premier League, coming up against the likes of teams like Liverpool, teams like Arsenal, teams like Manchester City that they've faced. But the next 6 fixtures that we've seen as well today, they're not going to be easy.
No, certainly. I'm just looking at the odds here because, it sometimes can be an indication of what's to come. Sean Dyche is the favourite there at 6-4. Then on there, you've got Chris Wilder, Jonathan Woodgate, John Terry, Thierry Henry, Michael Carrick, Gary O'Neill's on there. So some people without a lot of managerial experience who maybe if they came into a club who had a certain model, they would just have to adapt to that model because they're trying to make their way in the game. But Sean Dyche at the top there, though, Kyle, if people say he wouldn't fit this model, well, Sean Dyche at Burnley used to sign players for peanuts and make them better players. So it could work, in my opinion. He's been kind of dismissed by a lot of people saying, no, that wouldn't work. I don't see why it wouldn't.
That's one of the things that everyone talked about when it came to Sean Dyche, actually. One of the positives about him was his abilities and what he managed to do with Burnley, especially those seasons where he was taking them towards European football, as you said, spending very little money and managing to get the best out of that squad. Whoever does come in next needs to understand that the squad they've got right now that has had some criticism recently, they actually need to know what they can do with that. What are the targets for this season? Is that to remain a club, a Premier League club, or unfortunately, and hopefully they're not thinking this with 4 games to go, is it a case of seeing what they can do this season if they do get relegated? Right, what do we do next season to make sure that we come back? However, that is a very, very risky manoeuvre and strategy. My thinking is they want to obviously remain a Premier League club, but when you look at the likes of Fulham, when you look at the likes of Nottingham Forest, when you look at the likes of other clubs that were maybe down towards that bottom half of the table or quarter of the table last season, they're all strengthening. How do Bournemouth compare? And any manager that comes in knows they'll have a task on their hands, but if they do manage to do it, what a job that will be. 34 games to go, I'm not writing them out.
Right, well, Southampton, let's move on to them now because they've had a bid of £21 million